right, I'm told I started to say 6 o'clock. It's 4 o'clock, and so we're going to get started. In accordance with South Carolina Code of Laws 1985, Section 30-4-80-E, the following have been notified of the time, place, and agenda of this meeting: the Herald, the Charlotte Observer, CN2, and WRHI. If I could please ask everyone to join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. We'll now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You have all received a copy of the agenda. Were there adjustments or corrections?
No, ma'am.
Would be. We did call this as a special called meeting. Wayne Bolden will be joining us shortly. Mr. Bodie is en route, not sure he's going to make it in time. It was a last minute thing, so everybody could not necessarily clear their schedules as easily. Because it is a special call meeting, we literally have one agenda item. The way this meeting came about is that over the last 2 weeks since our previous meeting, and collecting feedback, and I'm guessing we're going to learn exactly how many comments there were some new things that came about that might be able to be adjusted. And so rather than wait until the voting night to spring it on everybody and then have to vote sort of real time, I think both from the standpoint of sharing it with the board and having an opportunity to discuss it, as well as the public seeing what the recommended changes are now and having another week of additional feedback collected, that was sort of the thought of pulling this together. I know it's 4 o'clock instead of 6, and everybody's probably not able to be here, but we are recording, and we'll make sure that it is available to those who couldn't be with us tonight. So with that, we have one agenda item, item 2.01, updates to the administrative recommendation to the board for student assignments for elementary and middle schools. And I believe Mr. Burke is going to come talk us through that.
Yes, good afternoon instead of good evening. First off, thank y'all for coming together and everybody getting the time to pull this together so we can share this information with you. As Chairwoman Spears mentioned, this is information we wanted to get out to the public in advance of the meeting and still have time to get more feedback on it, since this is quite a few changes to the map. We had some new information came in on certain areas, and when we started looking at that area, we were able to move it. And then that had a domino effect to other areas. And then, of course, again, we did get some continued feedback in from both our parents and staff. Since our last meeting, we've gotten about 200 emails, right in that range. Some of them are ones we had seen previously, and some of them are new. So we did get some additional feedback on that. And again, the administrative staff has been looking at these attendance lines, trying to figure out where adjustments could be made to deal with some of the concerns and still work on the utilization and populating the new schools. So with no further ado, we're going to start with the elementary maps. I apologize. I'm going to take 1 second. I do want to address there is a large map board in the room. That was a request that was made by Dr. Frattaroli several meetings ago. I know the board can't see it. There was nowhere to put it for both public and that, but there is, if anybody after the meeting wants to take a look and walk up to it, this map is just a clean map of our district. It shows where all of the schools are located so people can get an idea of how things are spread out across our district. So we weren't able to have that at the last meeting, but we were able to get this printed out and ready to go for this one. So. All right, on to our elementary map. Most of the changes to this map took place in the upper left portion of the district, or actually the whole upper portion of the district. I'm going to start with the first thing that we did, what kind of gave us a little bit more working room. We got some information from our transportation department as they were going through new road maps for bus transportation, that kind of stuff. The Zor Road area, which is this upper piece up here.
Hold up for just 1 second for everybody that's fumbling around. It's about halfway through the packet. It looks like there's a whole bunch of pages before it. Before we get to this.
It's just in reverse order.
Right.
So we have like a before and after.
Yeah, your packet has a before and after.
Okay.
Well, it has the current lines and the new lines.
Okay,
It doesn't have what we've previously displayed or anything like that. It has what we currently have and then what we're suggesting.
Trying to find it. Thank you.
All right. So the changes here, again, this upper area right here, traditionally that has been a problem in our district as far as transportation goes, because there's not been any connection that they did not have to go up into North Carolina and then back down. There is now some connections thanks to the new neighborhoods that have been built out there. Transportation looked at it and said, hey, we can probably get a better bus route in here that's going to cut time down, but we would want to send them to TK Elementary because you're going to come out in that area. So That particular little piece was the first of the dominoes to start. Once we moved that and started looking at some of the other areas where that opened up options, that kind of continued out from there. If you're looking in this particular areas here, we were able to work through, opened up some room at the Gold Hill side by going back into Pleasant and then going back into TKK area, which then opened up room in Pleasant Road. And if you look right along here, this is the Gold Hill area. That particular line that used to separate, I believe it's Spicewood and Eppington South, with the numbers that we had available, we were able to add back in the reserve to go back to Pleasant Knoll Elementary on this map, and we'll talk about them in the middle as well too. All of that was made available once we started to shift those numbers around. So most of the changes in the elementary area take place in this upper piece here. Actually, not most. All of the changes take place in this upper section here. And we'll talk about the utilization numbers and student numbers. Once I show you guys the middle school map, we'll do all of that at one time. So before I move to middle school, just on the map itself, do you have any questions to start with?
No. I'm sorry, we don't have an audience participation in this meeting, so.
I will say we're going to talk about the attendance numbers here in just a minute. So you're going to see the numbers at each school.
There's a
and where
map
they're at.
on the back of the room for you as well, if that's closer to be able to view. And it was not Spicewood, it was the reserve.
Yeah, the line originally
South.
split off and had Spicewood and Eppington South staying on this side.
Correct.
And then the new line for Flint Hill was the reserve and over. Now the reserve has been moved back to the same lines that Spicewood and Eppington South were in.
Right.
All right, moving on to the middle side. Again, on this one, most of the changes did also occur in that upper area. Because of the moves at elementary, we wanted to make sure that we were able to follow through what we do with middle school. One of the other considerations, and we're going to talk about numbers on this, is the feeder program, which we've talked about that previously. So again, you're looking at these areas here. You'll see that that little upper portion above the peninsula was able to be moved. We considered, again, all of the areas in here. So what you're seeing in brown is going to Gold Hill, and what you're seeing in yellow is going over to Pleasant Knoll. And then again, you'll see that line right there, the delineation between Pleasant Knoll and Flint Hill Middle. That's the same delineation you saw on the elementary side. So again, similar changes we had here to be able to continue the feeder system and put the students at the schools that were there. Obviously, we're not going to put somebody as best we can to go into one elementary and then a middle school that's across the other side of the district. So we were trying to make sure that we could keep that as close as possible. The other change on this particular map, we talked about this one previously as well, was the Holbrook Road area. That was another one that we had looked at originally that was zoned from, they're currently at Forest Creek. They are now moving, or they were moving up to Fort Mill Middle. When we looked at the numbers on that, some of the programming that's going on at Fort Mill Middle, and again, we'll talk about numbers in a minute, but we did not see a heavier impact in moving them back to Forest Creek and not impacting that area in this change. So this change does include them going back to their original zone lines. So that was the only change that did not involve that upper portion of the district on the middle school maps. Did I explain that clearly?
So just to confirm,
Sure.
nobody from Holbrook will be going to
Yes.
Fort Mill Middle School.
Yeah, the Holbrook section moved back to the Forest Creek lines, actually where they're currently at now. So we went back to that original boundary that they currently share.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep. All right. So that'll bring us to the utilization maps and where we're at with our students. The three right columns on the right are the ones that would be showing you the numbers for what we will have when these lines go into effect. If you look at the elementaries, with these changes and those shifts, it actually made it even better. Now, the current utilization is there, so we're not comparing this back to the previous recommendation. That's just where we're at currently. But what you're looking at on the elementary level, it looks pretty good on the number side. We have open space for the areas that we think that we're going to have some growth in. All of our schools are getting pretty well utilized there. All the students are accommodated. No issues that we saw on that one. Middle school side, you'll see a little bit of the yellow and red spots. That's where those deviate from the average. But we still believe that we've got the numbers correctly for to enable our growth, and that the schools that are already pretty much in the butter zone for where they'll be at don't have growth coming into that area. You will see that we have a couple of them that are a little bit smaller than others, and again, those are growth areas that we're looking at. The Gold Hill Middle and Elementary side both, they're pretty well built out on the land that is inside of their zone, so we're not seeing any future planned huge developments in those areas. So yes, their percentage is a little higher, but we're not expecting them to see a lot of growth. Pleasant Knoll does have the 81% on there, but from what we've seen with the planned development in there, that their growth can be addressed with the space they have available. Now, again, they're close, so, you know, if something that has not been pre-approved or that we've been told about all of a sudden pops up down the road, you know, we'd have to look at that issue. But for now, with what we know that is coming, we believe that we can accommodate the growth as well as get all the students out of the freezes and back into schools they were zoned for.
And you just mentioned unless something pops up that we don't know about, we did learn last week sometime about a new development that we weren't previously aware of
Yes.
downtown along the
Yeah,
track somewhere.
Yeah, so there was an announcement just recently in the Herald about an apartment complex that is going to be, think it's the old mill site that is in downtown, or some of the old mill buildings that are in downtown. It's going to be a shopping center area as well as have some homes and living in it. We haven't seen a lot of details on that, so we don't fully know. Like, we usually can look at the types of homes that are being built,
Right.
kind of determine what age kids, if anything, would come in there. So we're going to look and see. That may end up being more of a younger generation
maybe
development,
55 and
or
up.
maybe 55 and up. We just have to get the specifics on that. Overall, that would, I believe in these current lines, would be zoned over in the Riverview area, I believe, or somewhere in that area. There would be room to accommodate should there be kids come in there. One of the other things with how we laid this out, again, we don't just look at the school itself and the total number of the building capacity. We look at the programming, we look at the students that can be in there. So when you look down these, like I said, yeah, you're going to see some of the yellows for utilization or reds for utilization, but we feel comfortable where that's at, that this can sustain us through a long period of time until we, you know, see another point where we may or may not have an expansion needed.
Page 3 from the back.
All right, questions on this one?
Or 4.
I'm sorry,
Yep.
you may have addressed this while I was making my notes. Did you talk about the underutilization places?
Yes, so for specifically, I'll use Fort Mill Middle in an example on them because we did move the Holbrook kids back. Granted, it was not a large number of kids that got moved, but when we started looking again at Fort Mill Middle and looking at their utilization and some of the special programming they have at the school that utilizes a little bit more space than a traditional classroom, we did feel comfortable moving it back. Plus, we looked at Forest Creek and, you know, really looked at what's planned for that area. And we don't see a large amount of growth that's planned for that area that's zoned for that school. Obviously, down the road at Elizabeth, we're going to have that, but they're zoned over to a different middle school, so that's not going to impact. But, you know, again, utilization side, yes, it looks a little low at the Fort Mill Middle School, but when you start to figure in the programming on that school, they could use that extra space.
I assume the same is true with Springfield,
Yes.
even though it's,
And again, we balanced out the utilization versus the you know, concerns that we heard and things along those lines. So we were trying to meet as best we could the concerns we had. Some of the things we were not able to meet, and some of the things we got some information on. I know we heard a lot from the Habersham community about going back to Pleasant Road. One of the big concerns was being able to make a left from Coltharp onto 21. We were just told just this week that it has been approved that there will be a stoplight now being added at Coltharp and 21, which should alleviate those traffic concerns for making that left coming out of there. So we looked at all of that with the situation. And also some of these other changes, those changes in the upper portion for both Flint Hill Elementary and Flint Hill Middle. Obviously, there is a big concern about traffic going across 77, even with the new intersection that they put in. So by removing and sliding some of those neighborhoods back over, we're able to address some of that to try to help ease that, along with the stuff that we're doing that's already approved as part of our DOT plan, the double left turning lanes, the zipper lanes over onto Old Gold Hill Road. So all of those things are going in. So that's the combination of those things and trying to limit the number of traffic that's going across that bridge really should help to ease the traffic concern along with the upgrades to the road itself.
Hey, Joe,
Yes, sir.
when we get emails in, especially about the Habersham and worried about the left, just
Sure.
worried about the left turn.
Yep.
Are we letting them know that stoplight is actually on the way? Do we have a timeline on that?
We are working to get that. We just got the information that it's been approved through, I believe, RFATS, and I think the town has been working with them.
yeah,
on this.
I have seen some traffic with both Mayor Savage and Senator Johnson about it being approved and them trying to confirm exactly when it would happen. It hadn't-
Yeah, that's the plan, is that hopefully they're going to, from what we understand, it's in process. So
Are the people responding like, okay, that's good to know? Like,
Well, no,
don't-
we
I
have,
don't think it-
literally, we just got this information just
Okay,
recently. So
okay.
I'm telling you now to the community, and I'm assuming the town and stuff would have their information out. Obviously, they're the people who would control the scheduling and the building of that, so I'm sure they'll be sharing information too, once they get to that point.
Okay.
We just got, we told them, said, look, we want to be able to tell people this is coming.
Yeah,
And we asked.
we inquired,
Yes.
hey, is there any plans? And got the answer back, yes, there is. Good, can we find out more? And that was all in the last couple of days.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot going on. When they did the upgrades to the back half of the greenway there and put in their event space and all of that stuff, I think that started the conversation. And then just the traffic in the area obviously also brought that along as well too. So that light, it needs a light, I mean, honestly.
And the addition of that access point now at Shutterfly, or just past
Yes,
Shutterfly on
absolutely.
Colfax.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Right.
Sure.
About that.
So that should help alleviate the issues with the traffic making that left over in that area, especially during the rush hour times.
right.
All right, I've got a few other numbers to share with you, but I want to answer any more questions on this one before I click forward. And we can come back too.
I suspect we're gonna wanna go back.
Yeah, that's
We can come
perfectly
back
fine.
for my
Yep.
questions.
All right, what that also did, we talked last time, we were somewhere around 2,700 students impacted by this change across both middle and elementary school. That dropped that number down to just below 2,400. So, again, we need to populate the schools. We've got to move. We've got over 200 something kids on a freeze right now. So obviously there is going to be movement, but we are doing our best to limit that impact as best we can. All right, this is the percent feeder system. This is something we did look very hard at, because if you remember the last time we talked, on that elementary side, there were some low teen numbers on the feeder system. And that was a big concern for a lot of our community that said, hey, a very small percentage of this school is moving forward. So all of these changes that we made, 7 of our 12 elementary schools are now going to be 100% feeders. And that is something that is tough to do, but I think we've been able to accomplish that. And if you look on down this list, I think our lowest number is around 21% from the River Trail Elementary to Banks Trail on the elementary to middle side. So that was where a lot of the really big issues were at. We did have a lower percentage on the Pleasant Knoll to Nation Ford. On the other side, it was 10%. It went up to 16. Looking at the maps, the only way to be able to fix that at this point would be to rezone the high schools, and that is not something we are looking to do at this time. And I don't think we're going to have any future plans to do that unless way down the road there's a new school that needs to be built for high school. But we did try to improve that everywhere we could, and we feel that this is about as good as you're going to be able to get with that feeder system and still be able to meet all the other goals of populating the schools and addressing the other issues. All right, I'm gonna finish out with this one, and then we can go into all the questions you guys want to ask. What we're gonna do from here. So tomorrow, October 30th, just as we've done with every other meeting, we will be working to update the website. We will have a new interactive map so people can go plug in their address and and find out specific information on that. So if you're curious or you live near one of these areas, you want to see if it's you, you'll be able to do that. We'll also have the downloadable PDFs again as well too. We're going to continue to take feedback. So we still will have the feedback. We're asking everybody to please send that into the communications@fortmillschool.org email address. If there's something major we have missed or something else that we need to be considering, please email that in to us. We have been reading it. A lot of the changes we've been working on tonight have come from reading all of that feedback. So it is something we are looking at. I want to assure people this is not going to a dead email box and nobody's looking at it. Lastly, we'll come back to you on the November 5th as originally planned to ask you for your approval of the attendance lines. Should there be any changes at that point, we'll probably just have to explain them to you that night. But that would be basically, what we receive from feedback if there's anything that's a glaring issue or something else we could do to maybe improve the numbers a little bit better. But as it stands right now, the plan would be to bring this back to you as is for November 5th, barring any other new information. All right, so now we'll ask your questions, and I'll pop back the slides too if y'all want to see specific numbers, no problem.
Y'all wanna start with elementary and just put up elementaries and have any conversation about that first, or do you have something specific?
I have 1, 2, 3. I have 4 neighborhoods specific
Okay,
asking elementary and middle, and you may have to get back to
Bounce
us
between
because
them.
I didn't do a good job of thinking about my questions
It's okay.
to give you time.
sequential, okay.
Can you share the number of elementary students that make up Habersham, and conversely, the number that make up the middle school out of Habersham? And I have 4 neighborhoods that I'm curious about.
So you want the numbers for middle school kids in Habersham?
And elementary.
Elementary and middle school.
and elementary and middle school, and then you want the numbers of the school they're going to.
No,
Okay,
I just want to know how many elementary kids in Habersham
Okay.
and how many middle in Habersham.
Yeah.
Conversely, Hawks Creek, Knightsbridge, and the Reserve. Those are my four
Okay.
neighborhoods, same exact thing.
I got
I will, for that many neighborhoods, I'm gonna have to
I
go
think-
back and pull it.
And I thought about this earlier today, but I didn't.
From the top of my head, I wanna say there's 100 and something.
127 for elementary for Habersham.
Yeah,
For middle. 65 middle school students.
Okay,
127 elementary, 65 middle,
For Habersham.
Habersham.
what about Hawks Creek?
Middle school, 93.
Ooh,
114 elementary,
and Knightsbridge?
205 elementary, 114 middle,
And the Reserve?
wait. That's Knightsbridge and the Reserve. Hold on, let me find the
Okay.
difference. Hold on, sorry. That last number I gave you for Knightsbridge, the 205, was Reserve and,
Because they were originally together. right?
exactly.
Okay.
yeah, they were in a grid code together from previous
Okay.
rezonings.
But I think I have it, sorry. I don't know, I'll have to get back to you
Okay.
to give you the
Okay.
exact number, sorry.
That's
So
okay.
together it was 205 and what?
And
205 and 114
14.
Okay.
together. I want to say the elementary was, I said 205, I want to say it was like 120 and 85, somewhere in that range. 120 Knightsbridge, 85 Reserve. I could be a couple off there. And I want to say, middle school was like, I think it was like 70 and then 50 something. Or somewhere around there, 60 something, 50 something. But I'll get you an exact number.
Okay, thank you.
Well, and I'll just add on because I can assume why you're asking the questions. Because,
Yeah,
I mean, those are obviously the neighborhoods that we heard a lot from.
right.
And
And yeah, we did look at those specifically in moving them back, and we started with the reserve side, because again, where you're looking at where the schools are located,
Right.
we were able to move them back in, and if you look at the numbers over at Pleasant Knoll Middle School, you know, you're sitting at 814 on that side. So even if those numbers were halved,
Right.
exactly half, you're still adding 100 students back into that total if you bring them both in, and now you're at 914, which is going to be well over.
well, that's
Their
actually
operating
more than we
capacity.
have, or right at what we have now, and it's frozen.
And I got those exact numbers for you.
Oh, good.
Knightsbridge Elementary is 126, middle school is 74. The Reserve Elementary School is 75, middle school is 54.
Yeah, and truly, my purpose to asking that was, I know that these are larger neighborhoods, they're ones that have had large concerns, but when you see and hear the numbers and compare that to how full the schools are and what the impact those numbers make to any of the schools that are being thrown around of options and stay or go or whatever the case happens to be, we're not talking about small numbers and small percentages. We are talking about a very large amount of kids.
Yeah, I think the thing about it is we don't split neighborhoods, so
Right,
you don't want
exactly.
to, you couldn't try to draw a line here and there and split the neighborhoods up to smaller portions and those kinds of
You
things.
could,
because- Well, you could. Some districts do it. I'm not gonna
Some
lie.
districts do,
Some of
that's
them
right.
do.
We
Not to.
don't.
We prefer not to do that here. That is one goal that we have tried to stay pretty close to, is not splitting neighborhoods in parts and pieces. So yes, and again, when we looked at the numbers, and just by happenstance, it happened to be that the reserve, I think, was the smaller numbers, and it sat on the side of, that we would like to send the school to. So,
Right.
you know, so you don't end up with a donut hole there. You got a little different patch of color inside of one other school zone, so.
And Knightsbridge has a stoplight, which none of the other neighborhoods,
Well, I don't know that that really makes a concern because everybody has to make a left whether you're going to Pleasant Knoll or Flint Hill.
they do, but
So-
having that stoplight does help control the traffic, having lived in
Sure,
Edmonton South.
yeah.
That stoplight helps to control the traffic back to at least get to the middle.
Yeah, I think where this change really makes the impact is they're not crossing the bridge anymore. So that is, whatever those numbers were added up,
Right.
that's those number less cars that may have to cross over the bridge. Or, one
Or a
bus to
less full
cover that
bus.
one
Yeah.
neighborhood, so.
This is a huge win for, in my opinion, for the reserve, because nobody actually stays to the left and goes right down at the light. Everybody's cutting through the Four
Yeah.
Seasons neighborhood.
And we had heard that too, that there was a
Or-
different way
Or
around.
going right and going through Carrotwood. is what I
Or,
was
yeah,
saying, a
or going
little
right
known
and going through,
secret.
yeah,
Yes.
right.
Yeah, but
But
regardless
once
whether
you
they
know the
go,
secret path.
whichever way they choose, now there would not be a crossover that bridge area.
Correct,
So
yeah.
it would help address the traffic concerns on that side.
And the Habersham portion going over to 21 has no impact then also in the conversation for Gold Hill Road and going over 77.
Yeah, they wouldn't have really had any issue with the Gold Hill side of it because even if they had stayed at Pleasant Knoll, they don't ever come out on Gold Hill Road. So,
Right.
so that doesn't really impact that. But like I said, the reverse of that is a large neighborhood with numbers that would put them over. We'd actually probably have to move several of the neighborhoods we moved in out
Right.
to make a full accommodation.
I also was thinking back, I believe Habersham was changed to Nation Ford when the high school opened, and I remember that being a bit of an issue because at Pleasant Knoll, and I won't get my numbers right, but at Pleasant Knoll, that was pretty much the only Pleasant Knoll middle
Yeah,
kids
so
that were going to
And the
Nation
north side,
Ford
and the north
instead
side
of
Gold
going.
So
Hill.
now, if you're going to Springfield High School, if you're in Habersham and you're going to the Springfield Elementary, to Springfield Middle, to Nation Ford High School, 100% of the kids
Stay together.
stay with you together
'Cause
all the way through. So there is
It
no more
was at one
split
point
for that neighborhood.
small slice of
Yes.
Pleasant Knoll that
Yeah,
was.
that was one of the percentages that helped make that change, was the change over there.
Right.
Yeah.
The other conversation and information that I've seen in email pertains to a walking path and trails and sidewalks and whatnot that connect Habersham to Pleasant Knoll, to Pleasant Knoll. I can recall hearing that information when that neighborhood first came about. It's my belief and understanding that that hasn't happened and that it will also require some kind of a walking bridge over a creek and some other things that I'm not so sure that the reality of that hope is there, but it certainly is not something that
Yeah, I
has
don't have the
impact from
specifics on
us.
what would be required. It's not in place currently. We do know also the new construction development there that is wrapping around the school would also be in between that, but I haven't seen specific plans of how
Okay.
that would come through, but it's not in place currently, no.
But now it seems, I get the frustrations, like you can look out your backyard and see a school. But it sounds like right now, where it's just a numbers, it's a numbers thing at this point. If we've added back in the reserve, it just seems like we're kind of at that kind of capacity level that we can be at right now.
Yeah, again, like I said, if you look back at the number sheet for, let's use Pleasant Knoll Elementary School first, they're at 660, so they're okay on the elementary side. We also know that the development that is being built there from the type of homes that are going to be there tends to generate more of the younger age kids because they're not the freestanding large lot homes that are being built in there. So we do anticipate seeing middle school kids moving in there as well too, and obviously those kids will eventually matriculate up to the middle school. So that one we feel okay with even, you could technically move them back and it would put the numbers up, but I think it would again be in that higher range. But then you wouldn't want to move just the elementary and then send the middle over to the other side. And the middle is definitely where you for certain would be well over the capacity of the school if you tried to go ahead and move them back to both at that point. And that's the other thing too. We're trying not to have you go to this joint campus and then that joint campus if it can be, negated where you don't have to do that. We have a few that go to single standalones and then go to a joint campus, but we try to make those be 100% feeders.
Yeah, I remember a specific story that came up. Had my in-laws, their kids went to Riverview, and it was like literally in their backyard, and they could see it. And then they also got rezoned. So I get it. Or that's whenever Catawba Ridge opened, and my brother-in-law was slated to go to Fort Mill, and he lives on Creekside, which is a stone's throw away from Fort Mill High School, and
Yeah.
he had to go to Catawba Ridge. So
Yeah, that's a
Totally
case right
understand.
there that was made honestly just for safety alone because
Right.
we had an issue with kids that were running across that road, and that is not a safe road
Walking
to do
distance,
that.
but not a good
Yeah,
walking
and it
area.
was way too
Right.
close to be able to provide a bus transportation to. So yeah, that was a situation where it was literally across from the school, and we had to move it. So there are instances of that. It's not ideal.
it's not our first
It's
time
not ideal. No, it's
walking
definitely
through
not ideal.
that difficult situation there.
Yes.
The other one that you didn't ask about, it was just a generic comment that I saw in a lot of the emails, talked about, well, why not move apartments, or why not go ahead and fill it up and allow the new residents or the new homes being built to just go to some other
Yeah,
school
so-
frozen.
All right. The way, when we do maps, so I'll go to one of our maps just to show you. We don't, I keep using the term donut hole. I want to make sure people understand what that means. If you have a zoned area for a school, we don't want to have just a single color circled around one area here or one area there, that just those kids in that zoned area then get bussed out to another school, or you probably would have to put them, I mean, logistically, it would be a nightmare for transportation to be in multiple zones going to different schools. When we do that with freezes now, the way we do that is we bus those kids to their zone school, and then we have a shuttle that moves them over to the school that is the accepting school. That is not a permanent solution. That is only a solution that we use so that we're not redrawing lines every other year, which in past years would have been the case. Again, trying to just circle out small areas inside of a zone and move it out, I think, and honestly, truthfully, the perception of that to me is a little bit off as well too. You're going to take just these kids inside of this zone and move them over.
And I think the assumption, or sometimes the thought process, is that it's a temporary home, and so, but I don't think a lot of our apartments are.
Yeah, I would push back on that
residents.
as well too. Yes, it is temporary homes for some people in the district when they're waiting for a construction, but it is also a permanent home for a large number of people in
Stay
the
there for
district.
years and years.
Or at least from the time their kids come into the school to the time their kids go out of school.
Right.
Well, and based on where they get constructed, first and foremost, we don't get a vote or a voice when it comes to an apartment, a townhouse, another community, or the rest of that that's being built. We do have several schools that have a higher population of apartments that feed into them, just purely, again, based on
Based on
where
Well, based on where they're located.
they're located.
And the hard thing, or I think the thing about Fort Mill is obviously land is already at a premium in Fort Mill. If you look at if you go over and look at this map and look how densely packed the streets are in a lot of our areas that are zoned around our schools, a lot of the areas that are open spaces are either owned by the
All but
Greenway,
that middle.
owned by the Greenway in the middle, or the south end is floodplain and you can't build it in the first place. So
Right.
it is tough for developers at this point to come in and build a mega neighborhood or something along those lines. So those days are kind of starting, I think, to creep down. But what you will see is smaller plots of land where they can put 2 or 3 apartment buildings or townhomes or some of those. You're going to start to see those. Now, all the ones we know of, they're accounted for in this. Anything that's been permitted, they're accounted for in this. But, 5 years from now, that may not be the case. Somebody may decide to sell their land, and then they go on from there. But as far as large tracts and chunks, it's very few and far between at this point in Fort Mill.
Well, and it bears stating again, 2 things. We are the smallest geographic school district in the state of South Carolina at 52 square miles-ish. And we have how many? 2,100 acres of Ann Springs Close Greenway. Thank you, Ms. Close, but that eats up.
Yeah, that makes it a little bit of a challenge because we do have to constantly, you can literally look at the circle that goes around it.
Right.
It's a situation where when we place because of the protection of that land, that's how the hole in that goes to. I think the other thing too, you brought up our size, being 52 square miles and being the largest district in York County versus let's say use a York, for example, which has a massive zone and is the smallest in York County. It's a big difference in trying to transport kids and how long it takes to get from places and that kind of thing. So,
And I would say that,
York one's got 40% of the land in the county.
yes.
yeah.
They've got 53 square miles, not 52.
And I would say that the good news, silver lining out of some of that, is that even if it's a further away school, it's an extra mile.
Yeah.
Maybe, 2 miles. So it's, because they're so dense, it's not as far to go compared to the one that was closer.
Where the trade-off we make is the shorter distance. We do have heavier traffic. Nobody can argue that. So we have tried to do what we can to address some of that in this. And I'll tell you, the district is still actively pressuring everybody we can to look at lights, speed limits, all of that stuff for safety reasons and for ease of travel reasons. That is something we are always active in and trying to come up
And
with.
we're also building bigger schools where the land that we have been able to protect allows for it. So that's something that our
Sure.
public has asked for years as well.
Yeah, there's only so big you can build before operational just becomes,
Right.
not feasible. But yes, that would be some of the things we're looking at.
I'm done. I promise.
Scott had one or more.
Yeah, I first want to start by just thanking the administration. You would think that the amount of work that you guys have put into this, it would consume all of your time over the last couple weeks, but you've also been running, one of the most successful school districts in the country. So I appreciate the work and effort that you guys have been putting into this, to take the feedback, to be thoughtful and deliberate in how you've made some adjustments. And I think we can see that in some of the data here. I want to talk about that map first,
Okay.
just
Yep.
for the people that are here that can maybe grab a picture of it. But if you have a pointer there?
It does not have a laser in there.
Okay,
but
so
I can go stand and point at something.
where Flint Hill is, what I was trying to point out at the last meeting is it's very tough to see in the color-coded map where Flint Hill is. It's easier, I believe, to see when you add a school in that area and you're landlocked really by the county and state lines to the north and to the east. And you're really kind of landlocked by the Greenway to the south. You have to start moving in a counterclockwise direction to be able to populate a brand new school that's there, which is what we're seeing and what's reflective of this. So that was the purpose of that map, because I really think you can really isolate where the congestion is where we're putting new schools. So that's why I requested that map be there. I really like the efforts that were made where the utilization rate at the elementary school, how everything looks like it's very well balanced, and some of the schools that we know we're going to have growth are at the lower end of that utilization rate. The one thing that just sticks out to me more than anything else on this list that I have a concern about is the utilization rate at Flint Hill Middle School.
Yes.
Because I do not think that area is going to be a high growth area where we have that. And we're opening what's going to be our largest middle school at about half capacity with no area to growth. And I don't know how we solve that, but that's definitely a concern.
But I think one of the things, so a couple of things that we looked at with that. First off, if you look back at Flint Hill Elementary School and look at the numbers that we're opening that school up with, you're eventually going to have those kids matriculate in. Now, granted, they don't move all at once. They move a grade at a time. But you're going to see rises in the numbers on that side. It is a bigger school. One of the things we talked about, I mentioned earlier about the Fort Mill Middle School special programming they have there. This now opens up some opportunities that we could look at maybe doing some things at that middle school and giving some extra programs and special programs that could work there. We're looking at the different populations. There may be some extra services we can put into that school with the extra space we have there. And then as well, too, as I mentioned, we don't know exactly where anything that's future that's not permitted or talked about at this time. But when you look at this map, there are pockets of white around that school that if somebody decided to sell that land could eventually be a growth area for it. And those pockets of white around that school don't exist around a lot of these other schools. So I know we say there's no growth planned for that right now, but I would not go as far as to say it's not going to happen. I can point to at least 2 areas on that map that I think eventually could become possible depending on future sales of land and who decides to move in or out.
That's it.
So, Joe, did I understand correct? This all kind of came about because someone in transportation kind of caught a fresh idea.
Well, I don't know that they caught a fresh idea. They were able to in the process of looking at the maps and looking at where roads at. Matter of fact, on this map, particularly right here, you don't even see that connection, and that's the most up-to-date map
Wow.
that we're able to find. So, it's not really that they caught it. It's just that it's a newer piece that has come in that's never existed before. That little corner in multiple rezonings now is everybody always looks at it and goes, why are they coming this way instead of just going here? And we've had to say, there's just no connection there. But now, with the addition of the neighborhoods over there being completed and the roads being opened up, it has opened that opportunity.
It's that Hubert Graham Way extension that now goes all the way through to Zor Road that
Oh, yeah.
wasn't there, I don't know, 6 months ago?
Yeah.
8 months ago, something like that. I forgot. I
So-
forget about it. I should take it more.
Yeah,
often.
it's not even, I don't even know that transportation is fully accounted into this year's travel at this point. I think that might have been part of where it's
Yeah.
come from.
So I've been really impressed with the, I'll say it like this. How do we feel about, how happy are we with, the Cropper company that kind of did the,
Oh, I want to say they've been very responsive. That's the other thing. The maps that you're seeing here tonight, all of the charts that you're seeing here, what we're doing on, I'm sorry, I'm going the wrong way. All of this stuff that you're seeing here, we're making the changes based on the spreadsheets we have, looking at these maps, and we're calling them and saying, hey, we need this changed and we need it immediately because we want to show it to the public tomorrow.
Okay.
So they literally came in and designed out all these new maps based on the changes we were able to work on at the end of last week, and got all these back to me late yesterday so that I could create my presentation and we could guarantee to have this meeting. So they've been extremely responsive to us every time we've called them with a change or we had questions about an area or wanted to clarify something. Yeah, they've been extremely helpful and responsive on this one.
Great.
Yeah, the district does not own or have a person even qualified to operate the GIS like software to design these. So that's one of the features. Even when we did this without Cropper, when we went through Mr. Holden, we operated that through the York County GIS person at the time that was able to work with us with their experience and through Mr. Holden. So it's great to be able to have somebody who actually can do this. Because I'll be honest with you, when we were working at this, I contemplated printing out one of these using individual pages and literally cutting out each of the lines going around it so that we could start piecing and puzzling together. I found out that it would take about 20 sheets and we'd be sitting there with an X-Acto knife for hours trying to cut these things out. So to be able to do it on a spreadsheet and then send it to them and say, hey, make this the new visual map so we can see what it looks like and get it back to us immediately has been wonderful.
great, thank you.
Joe, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
that, I am confident you covered right before I got here, so my
It's
apologies.
okay.
But similar to Dr. Frattaroli's question about the underutilization of Flint Hill, going back to Gold Hill with overutilization, I don't have
Go into that one.
data to throw out, but
Yeah.
I've been through quite a
lot of
few
these.
Sure. Yep.
attempts rezonings.
Yeah.
And it seems like that is probably our most frequent frozen school.
I would agree, and we looked at that. And again, I wouldn't say we're overutilizing them because there's still about 192 student capacity there, so they're below their threshold. They're about 89% under these lines. But what we did was starting looking at all the developments, and they are pretty much finished out. There is not anything new coming in that school zone anymore that's going to cause that problem. Now we're seeing it in some of our other school zones, and there's not really any major pieces of land there inside of that zone. I'm sorry?
No
Yeah.
white zones.
Yes, yeah, if you
So-
look at that map, that is one of the most densely populated areas of our district, and that's why we had such an issue there. But I think they have now reached pretty close to their cap.
The two that are underway, one of them is River Falls, that's
Windy-
directly across from Teague Elementary, and I don't remember the name.
Windy Dell and Lucerne, which is on Gardendale,
Right.
both of those. And then the other one's done.
Right.
Windhaven, that
Yeah.
one's done.
Yeah.
So we believe we've got capacity in there to deal with anything that is remainder inside of those zones at this time. Yep.
And when you say, for some time, I don't know, I don't remember what the last time we did a 10-year facility study, what it said our next school was, but I believe it to be 28, 29 or so,
Late 20.
and that, I believe, was elementary.
Usually, I want to say we get about 5 to 6 years.
Right, that's what I was saying, so it's.
Because
at
I
least in
look
the
back,
middle
when I first joined the district was the year that Pleasant Hill Middle opened up. So we had that one open, and then we had the high school open, and then down the road, we had the two new elementaries in the middle, and each of those had about the 5 to 6 year span before they were opened up. And those were all open, like I said, mostly to address some of the large neighborhoods that we knew were coming,
Right.
which we're not seeing right now on the permit side.
We've,
Freeze enrollment strategy prevents us from having to redraw
Yeah.
right,
frequently.
too
And
quickly.
we're fortunate, but they were so small, like a
Clover looked at the freeze, but they got more area
Yeah.
than the bus.
Yeah,
kids.
the times for busing their kids to school and then to take the shuttles,
Curse and a
they were
benefit.
not able to match what we're able to do with getting the kids transferred over and back morning and afternoons.
And we, you know, we have that list that we get every so often from the county, the town, and the city of projected platted neighborhoods. And fairly little has been added to it over the last 5 years or so that we used it a lot.
Yeah, it's more the smaller developments like the apartment complexes.
They're still coming,
Yeah.
you know, and they're planned for 26 and 27 and 28, so there's still
Yeah.
some out there, but there haven't been new line items added very much. That's why the one downtown sort of caught my attention, because we haven't had a new neighborhood be discussed in a while.
Yeah, I mean, we're still seeing it on the south end, though. I mean, we've got, like I said, multiple areas down there that are being built out, and we figured that into those schools, both
Because they're
Riverview,
already on those sheets.
Catawba Ridge, and all the
And that-
elementaries and middles and highs that are in that area will be able to accept and accommodate that under these numbers. So,
That east side of Elizabeth on the
Yes.
east side of the bypass, they're gonna start moving dirt.
Yeah.
Probably Q1.
And there's 4 phases of Pleasant Vista.
Mm-hmm.
There's yet another phase of Mason's Bend. Again, I don't know if it'll ever happen, but it's on there right now.
and I mean, you flip that over to the W Bridge side, which used to be one of our biggest areas. Now, I think there's only a handful of development expansion. I think the Massey Enclave still has some new lots coming in, but those are much larger single-family lots, so you're not looking at massive amounts of people. And I know for a fact the Massey development is finalized.
Complete.
So it's all finished on that side. So yeah, we're seeing that kind of shift to the Elizabeth area and the southern end of the district.
Hey, Joe.
Yes,
So, not exactly schools related, but I feel like you can't have this conversation without asking this. Do we have any update on Silfab at all?
I have not gotten any more word on anything new on that. Again, we know that the court cases are ongoing,
Okay.
but I have not heard anything as far as where they're at in their process.
Okay.
Beyond what we shared previously.
I would just add, we have sought legal counsel to advise us if there's anything that they think we should be doing. So I think that's the only other new item is that one day, a few days ago, you know, reached out to get some guidance, because to understand what our rules are and what we can and can't do.
Right. Well, and I think, if I recall from our last meeting or something that I read, and maybe it was related to the EPA approval, but did not Silfab move their holding tanks from, in their plan anyway, from the school side to the other side of their facility?
I don't know where they were originally planned. I do know that they are now on the far side.
So they're on the far side, further
Yeah,
yet
like I said,
still
I don't know what their
away
original
from our-
plans were,
yeah,
but the RMP
from our
shows them on the
facility.
opposite side, yes.
Do we have an update on what the actual distance is of, because I know there's been other things like thrown out of there's a this mile radius, but I haven't heard anything official.
I'm sorry.
The only thing I know is what's in the EPA, the report that was not approved, confirmed by the EPA. And what it says, there's 3 different scenarios.
Yeah, for your initial, I think it
Worst case
detailed different
scenario,
levels
3
of
different chemicals and what they
scenarios.
would evacuate. And that's the only thing I know
Yeah.
or have seen.
Okay.
Now, again, I want to, and I've tried to make this as clear as I can to everybody out there. The district, this school will be no different than any of our other schools as far as making sure they have emergency plans, whether that's evacuation plans that are needed for, again, a number of issues that schools deal with, some issues that schools deal with now that were not dealt with 20 years ago. So we will have, this school will have its full complement of all emergency planning that is needed. And again, we work with our first responders and our, county emergency management to develop all of those plans. And those
Which
will be
may
in place.
include plans beyond what other schools have to have,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
If
well,
needed.
I can tell you right now, I don't even know that that's an exact statement because every school has an evacuation plan.
Right.
And this school will be no different.
Right.
And those evacuation plans address, and we've gone through them before, but, active shooter situations, natural disasters out of our control, that kind of thing. So this school will have an evacuation plan.
Right.
And if we're ever told, for whatever reason, you need to get the kids out of the building, we will have a plan in place to do that. Its proximity to our bus lot and everything actually makes that one a little bit easier to plan
Right.
versus a school that's maybe on the south end or on the far bottom end, furthest away from our bus lots and district offices. So But no, this school won't be any different as far as that goes. It will have a full complement of emergency plans to deal with any scenario that we have to face over there.
Some chatter that I've seen, and I guess I would ask for a little additional elaboration, not a ton, because I am the first to say when it comes to safety precautions and so on and so forth, we don't write the map and pass it out to the bad guys. But I saw some chatter that related to, well, why would we be concerned or comparing this to US foods? Well, I know in food processing and storage and other things, there's a whole lot of ammonia that
Sure,
goes
they
on
have
with
chemical
some of
storage
that,
on site, and so yes, they would be another one. They have,
And
I
trains
believe it's a
bring
very
that in
similar
along
RMP
with-
to what we've seen before. So
Right.
again, the evacuation side of that, there isn't a mandatory area for US Foods. There isn't a mandatory area that we've been made aware of for the SOFAB plant. What their manual says from what we were provided is that any first responder can come out there and depending on the situation can determine there is evacuation needed. Sometimes that may be if take the chemicals out of it for a second. If there is a large fire that is putting out black smoke and it's blowing right at a residential area or a school or something along those lines, they can come in and say, we want to get those people moved out. So they will always have that discretion, and should they put that in place, we will be ready to accept that. Now, to your question about specifics, you actually have a board policy that does not allow for specifics to be released
Correct.
on safety plans. That being said, we can still let people know that we have an evacuation plan. It will include transportation by our buses, our departments. It will include a reunification location. That location is not shared until the time of, because quite frankly, we have multiple sites we use depending on what's happening. If we're evacuating a school and the reunification plan is Catawba Ridge, and Catawba Ridge is also having an emergency, we're gonna have to go to Plan B. So, part of these plans are set forth so that they have flexibility to deal with individual situations. So, again, I can assure everybody it's going to have any necessary plans. Those plans are gonna mirror things that we have in place for other schools, and they will be comprehensive. I can tell you in discussions that we've had when it comes to the reunification side, we look at sites that are gonna allow us to go in and be able to utilize our own systems so that we can track kids and make sure we have an idea of where the kids are at, who they're with, who they're getting released to, all of that stuff. So, but we're not going to release the specifics of how we do that. We're not going to release routes that they would take to locations because, again, those may change depending on what the situation is. So I can tell you there will be plans, but no, there won't be like a booklet that we would hand out to the public and say, here's how we do everything.
Other questions,
It's good work.
I
discussion?
appreciate it. Thank you. It's been a huge team effort between the district administration and trying to move all this stuff around.
All right, so just to wrap it up, then describe one more time what the
Yep.
plan is going forward after right now.
So tomorrow, I can't say a specific time, but as quickly and fast as we can get the new interactive map loaded and everything, all the PDFs up to our website, we will have all of this uploaded as it has been done. Same process as the past 2 meetings where we talked about this. We'll have all of that in place. We're going to put a little update on there that says what we did, kind of what I talked about tonight. And then basically from tonight through the time we come back here, we're again accepting feedback. Communications, yep, I'll pop it back up one more time. And the reason we're asking it to go to this one is because this is how we're quantifying everything that comes in so that we don't get confused if we get a double email because it got sent over here and then got sent here. Or just so that we can track everything at one. And again, this is being read daily. This is not a dead email box. So please send any feedback you have between now and November 4th to the communications@fortmillschools.org email address. We're going to continue to look at it as we have been doing, and then we will plan to come back to you on November 5th with our recommendation. I would assume barring any major other things that pop up, this would be what we would bring back to you as our recommendation. But again, it's not set. We're still going to be looking at everything between now and then.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for dialing in or joining on short notice. And you can blow it up a whole lot bigger online to be able to see what streets and things like that. Send your feedback in and we'll continue to look through it and see what happens. So thanks everybody for joining. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
We are adjourned. Have a great evening.
That was a little